I caught up with Nationals leader David Littleproud and I put to him that where the Nats have led, surely the Liberals must follow.
Well, look, we hope so, but I'm not going to preempt anything. I think it's important that we give them the time and space to create that environment for them to get to their position. We have had a long-held road to this position. We started this in June and we want to be calm and methodical about getting to this juncture. And I think we've got to a position that's eminently sensible, that says that we can do better climate and energy policy that's cheaper, that's better and that's fairer for all Australians. And much of that is about spending less money, which means it keeps more in Australians' pockets rather than the $9 trillion that Anthony Albanese is going to spend on his net zero escapade.
Of course it's logical, of course it's sensible, of course it's rational, and of course it's popular with Conservative voters, right of centre voters. We've seen that really with the drift away to One Nation in the polls. So surely Susan Lee would be committing political suicide if she wasn't to footprint this policy to make sure the coalition, both major coalition parties, had a matching climate and energy policy.
Yeah, and look, Chris, I think it goes beyond just those of centre-right. This goes to people in the leafy suburbs of capital cities who would never have thought of voting National before, but would see this as a policy that's eminently sensible. We're tying ourselves to the world in the way that they're pivoting towards addressing climate change through net zero. They're starting to pivot away, but we're not going to be a laggard, but we're not going to streak ahead like the Albanese government is. It's going to cost you $9 trillion. What we're going to do is be sensible, peg ourselves to the world, but also make sure that we have adaptation here in sensible policies that look to build resilience in our environment and also help farmers who have taken much of the brunt of the cost of this. We've lost 7.2 million hectares of agricultural land and lose another 5.1 million hectares of agricultural land, which tears up your food security and pushes up your food prices when there is a cheaper, fairer and better way to do this.
People who watch this program, certainly in this station, will understand all of that. Well, I know why this policy makes sense, but my point is the fact that it must be the Liberal Party's policy too, that it must be a coalition policy, because the alternative would be diabolical in a policy sense, but also a political sense. Let's have a listen to a Liberal frontbencher today, Senator Andrew Bragg.
The Paris Accord requires you to get to net zero in the second half of this century. So I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that Australia could achieve that.
There's Andrew Bragg saying we've got to stick with Paris. What's your view on that? Can you stick with Paris and just slow down the move to net zero, or do you actually have to have a clear break?
Oh, look, I think what has been the mistakes of the past is that we've set a 2050 target, a timeline that the world is seeing is unachievable. What we're saying is the world's realising that and is either slowing down or walking away. In fact, there's 128 countries that still haven't given their 2035 interim target. So the world is pivoting and we should pivot with it. And that's what we're saying. And by having these long-term targets puts into question the policy settings that in the here and now that Australians are feeling. So what we've said is we should have short-term targets that actually reflect where the world's going, but where technology is going as well. And there may be a juncture in the future where technology comes to get us there, but here in Australia, the biggest leap we could take forward, which is part of this policy, is pivot towards nuclear energy. That is a common sense solution. And by expanding the capacity investment scheme to existing coal-fired power stations, that drives pressure down on energy bills in the here and now and buys us the time to transition into nuclear energy as part of the base load solution here in Australia. This is where the common sense of physics and economics is there in front of us if we want to grab it. And that's what this policy is saying to the world and saying to Australia. There is a cheaper, better, fairer way to do this.
But coming back to the politics of this, the common sense approach is that the Liberals must share your same policy.
Yeah, and we hope they will. And I think when they look through our policy document, that we haven't just said no. That would have been the easy thing to do straight after the election. But what we did was take our time to get it right and to have a solution. Because I think what happens as you get closer to ballot time is they'll want a solution. They want us to say no, but they want a solution. And I think now we've given the opportunity for the Liberal Party. We want to give them the space and opportunity to run the ruler over this.
Yeah, hang on. Let me jump in there. They don't have the time or the space. At the moment the coalition is polling 24%, a record low. As you said, they need to come on board with the same policy as you. They need to do that as soon as possible, don't they? So that you can start prosecuting the case and recovering as a political movement.
Yeah, and look, I'd like them to do it straight away, but I don't want to be somebody that causes grief within the Liberal Party. Obviously, there's some angst about what the National Party has done, but we've been very upfront and transparent about the process we were going through, and I don't apologise for that. But what we put forward is an eminently sensible solution, and I want to create an environment for them to do it, and I hope it is as quick as possible, because I agree with you, Chris. I think that if we're able to get behind something as sensible as this policy that the Nationals have put forward, I think we have an alternative to say to the Australian people that we can address climate and energy policy in a practical way that is cheaper, that is better and is fairer to Australia and to the world.
David Littleproud, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, mate.